Good evening, ladies, gentlemen, and MBs, and welcome to Warui Deshou's not quite stream of thought. This is podcast format at the moment because we're in emergency mode thanks to that thing that's going around. You know, you might have heard of it. But anyway, I'm Shadon, and joining me as always from across the pond at Close Smart is the Subtle Doctor.
What's going on, fam? I hope everybody is safe. I hope everybody is doing as well as they can be and is ready to talk about some anime.
Indeed, we've gone to a new season now, so we're going to be covering some new things, no less. Although this anime that we're covering definitely has its references to some older stuff, certainly, which we'll cover soon enough. I mean, I do feel bad for it, though, because how do you follow a show like Keep Your Hands Off Eizouken? How do you do that? You don't, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean... like
maybe that should be that should be a question we put to our audience, actually. Like, if there was any show from the past that's from anime, you know, that could, if it followed Eizouken, be better in it, what would it be? I get the feeling that list would be very short, possibly enough to fit on a bar mat or maybe a single sticky note if we're good enough. Yeah,
I mean, I think as long as it's different, like that would matter more to me, like as a viewer. It doesn't even necessarily have to be better, but it's like I enjoy like palate cleansers, right? Like that's sort of the wrong word for talking about Eizouken because it didn't leave a bad taste in my mouth or anything, but just variety. You know, we've seen this sort of show. Now let's have a quality this kind of show. And I actually think, I know
what taste it left in your mouth though, Doc. It was easy breezy.
Mm-hmm. No, for sure. It was a minty freshness there. But this is, but listeners here, Mappa's new show for the spring 2020 season is definitely a different kind of show. And, you know, like most anime, it is referencing older anime. And then, you know, if you've seen the older anime references, you'll know that anime itself referenced even older anime. I've talked about on here that anime tends to be a very self-referential medium. And we talked about like, the need for creators to expose themselves to different media, different kinds of stories to kind of, bring variety and different experiences and, you know, interesting and different kinds of storytelling and tropes and things like that into it. But being referential isn't necessarily bad. And I think there's a lot going on for this show, but we'll save that for when we discuss the finer points of this episode.
Indeed. So this is Listeners Episode 1. I'm going to go through a little bit of the plot summary for you here, as we are often want to do on this show. So we start with something I didn't...
Whoa! Hold on there. We should say, before we start, that the Twitter polls will exist. They will not be live, because so typically this show is a live stream, which we're not able to do because I don't have access to my streaming PC. So, you know, you're listening to this on demand, on YouTube or Spotify or wherever. We're gonna have some polls that you can vote on after, you know, but usually they'll be live and we'll take their temperature live, but that won't be happening for a while. Maybe in the midst of the show it will be restored to its full and rightful place, but
you get to see me on screen again, folks. Look forward to that horrifying image.
And do we want to talk about the creatives behind the show real quick?
Oh, yes, you're right. Sorry, yeah. I feel so out of the loop. I've completely forgotten our own bloody format.
Man, listen.
But yes, yeah. Please do.
Everything's a mess. Like, schedules are out of whack. Formats are out the window. It's okay. So, yeah, like I said, this is the new Mappa show. And I don't have on hand the director for episode 1, but I'll talk about the creatives sort of overseeing the series as a whole. First, we got the series director, Hiroaki Ando. And Ando-san has directed quite a few things. basically, like, the first thing my eye is drawn to is the entire Ajin franchise, which I know people have not necessarily positive feelings about. Let's just say it had a mixed reception. He also directed, or he storyboarder. Well, you know what? That's only one episode. That's less important. He was involved with Freedom. If you remember Freedom Project, that was basically a glorified cup noodle advertisement dressed up as a mecha show, if I recall correctly.
I see no issue with that.
Nope, totally fine. Totally fine. Storyboarded and was a technical director for the Tek on Concrete movie, which is an adaptation of a great manga called Black and White. Please don't make the Lionhead Studios Molyneux jokes. Black and White. It was I haven't seen the movie, but I just adore that manga and that mangaka. Let's see. Here's an anime with the greatest disparity, I think, or one of the greatest disparities between the skeeviness that the title invokes in your brain and the actual skeeviness in the show, which is pretty much zero. Tweenie Witches. It just makes you think, like, ooh, what's going on there? Probably not something good.
Is that a Bratz like doll line?
I think it's a magical girl show.
My God.
So Ando directed a couple episodes of that. Something called Five Numbers. Directed a short in Digital Juice, which is a cool little thing. So Ando's been around directing stuff since it looks like since the early aughts, if not before, and then done a lot of stuff currently with Ajin Demi-Human, and now is gracing us with his talents on Listeners. But I think the head writer, the person credited with series composition, is probably a man who or more likely to know than Ando, and that's Dai Sato. Dai Sato is a prolific and well-known writer in anime. We've got the series composition for Eureka 7. That's right, he wrote Eureka 7 also. So he's just playing the hits at this point.
Excellent pun. I like that. Well done, Doc. Well done. He's got his playlist, and he's put all the quarters in the jukebox.
Wrote Eureka 7, the sort of, he's the head writer and wrote the screenplay, or rather the script, for 12 episodes, and has been involved with the movies and the different kind of adaptations with that. Was a writer for a little show you may or may not know called Cowboy Bebop, just a minor little blip on the anime radar. Oh my God. Wrote the scripts for a number of episodes.
Oh dear. I'm just going to say this now, folks, as Doc is going to keep wrestling on this list of, acclaimed and brilliant anime that I personally really like. I came out of this episode of Listeners, this very first one, feeling a bit cold on it, to be quite honest. So, if you want to come up with the pitchforks and torches, you can't, because that would be violating social distancing. Haha, take that. No, you are more than welcome to do so, but yeah, I'm going to get that out of the gate now, because I don't want it to be a surprise later now that I'm learning, oh my God, this guy is actually legitimately talented and has done some amazing work in the past to boot as well. Don't I feel awkward?
We've got Ghost in the Shell standalone complex.
I'm just gonna mute you at the moment, by the way. You can keep on talking, because the less I know, the less embarrassed I'll feel when I say things later.
10 episodes of the first season, 5 in the second season. We've got 3 episodes of A Woman Called Fujiko Mine.
Oh, fuck my life.
A Macross Frontier theme song, which is an interesting
what?
credit. Yeah, well, it says insert.
Wait, was
song
that
by
Lion
Shadon.
Was that Lion or Triangler? You know what? It doesn't even matter. Like, the fact that you're going to keep rattling these things off, and it's just like, it's like inserting needles into me. It's like playing pop-up pirate with my soul here and my dignity.
You probably don't know Wolf's Rain, but that is an excellent show that he wrote. 7 episodes of the scripts or the screenplays. We got scripts for Space Dandy, a few episodes of each season, and 5 episodes of Samurai Champloo. So worked with Shinichiro Watanabe quite a bit. Worked on really some incredible stuff that Bandai has released over here, like Ghost in the Shell, like Eureka 7. And yeah, there's other things, like the ending song for the History of Trunks OAV special from Dragon Ball Z. The dude writes song lyrics. I remember actually when I watched that recently. I think it was in the movie. I think I went to see that in the theater, and I remember seeing his name on screen for lyrics, and I was like, wait a minute. Is that another Dai Sato? No, it's that Dai Sato. Holy crap! Why? Oh, I should mention.
You're gonna tell me next that he's also a polymath in various other fields. Like he's also a talented piano player. He's a theoretical physicist. He's a Navy SEAL. Just keep going, Doc. It's fine. It's fine.
I have to mention a friend David Major's favorite anime, Ergo Proxy, is on here. Screenplay for that show, like the entire screenplay, and the chief writer, Dai Sato. And there was one more thing. Oh, a couple scripts of Eden of the East. So, gosh, I wish I could. Why can I not remember the director of Eden of the East? It's the same person who directed Standalone Complex. It's Mamoru Oshii's sort of protege. Kenji Kamiyama, I think.
There we go.
So worked with him a lot, and as I said, Watanabe-san. So someone who's been around and put pen to paper on a whole lot of really excellent stuff. And listeners, I think it has a lot to live up to, but we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, we will. Jesus Christ. I know I'm the dark horse of this show, of our little podcast here, with opinions and all that, but oh boy. I was just hoping you were going to tell me it was just some random, but nope. It would have to be one of the, well-respected godfathers of modern anime. Ah, dear. Well, if I'm going to be damned, I'll be damned for who I am, so let's crack on then. Okay, so let's do a little plot recap here. And I have to say, I liked the opening seconds of this show because it depicted what I always expected would happen. The end of the world as we know it through rock and roll. I mean, how can you go wrong with that as an opener to your anime? But yes, we are getting the introductory moment here with a character we'll later learn is named Echo. He's our lead guy. Watching a giant robot performing rock music or at a concert, which then explodes. I mean, I've seen AC/DC live. They didn't really have much to, hold to this, not a candle to it, to be quite honest. And then we get our little title card, which is Live Forever in the Oasis font, not the last Oasis reference we'll get, or indeed the last musical reference we'll get here. I mean, if you thought, Araki was not exactly conservative with his references to music, then just buckle up with this particular show.
It loves the British rock. And such like. Also, the strobe lighting during the scene was so cool. I love the lights as they were playing across the screen. When the robot was it was so awesome. It reminded me of the first scene of AKB 0048, the satellite show. When the main character is watching her idols do their concert, and much like this show, the idols were musicians who also fought evil beings. And she fell in love with music, and our boy Echo, I don't know if he necessarily fell in love with music, but certainly things adjacent to the performance of music. He really formed an attachment to them.
I think the word you're probably looking for there is spectacle, because oftentimes when you go watch large concerts, the music is certainly one part of it, but I'd be lying if I said that if you, for example, went to see Kiss, that you'd be going to watch them entirely for the quality of their music.
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
they put on a show, not a concert. And you might think, well, those are the same things, but they're not, strictly speaking.
Yeah.
And indeed, when I mentioned AC/DC before, that was a part of the appeal of watching them when I went to saw them at a festival, which is not the music necessarily, which is fine in its own right if you like that kind of stuff, in my opinion, but it's certainly not anything revolutionary. But just the pure, like, you know, stadium, like, rock, full-blown, like, you know,
the
fireworks
experience.
display. Yeah, exactly. The theatrics, you name it.
Yeah.
Getting to see, you know, the giant bell rung during Hell's Bells, which makes no sense from a musical standpoint, but it's fun to watch. That kind of thing, you know?
Yeah, and the robot, I think, too, the spectacle, but also the robot. Like, he's kind of a parts junkie, as we'll find out, and it probably...
He's Rey from the Force Awakens, and, well, that's all the Star Wars fans leaving this podcast right now for that comparison. It's like, nope, sequel trilogy, I'm out. Even though I actually quite like the sequel trilogy, save for Rise of Skywalker, which I'd refuse to watch.
Yeah, I haven't seen it yet either.
No, I've heard enough about that particular film to know that I would head... I like both of them quite a lot.
They're good.
Yeah, come fight me in the street, Star Wars haters. You know. Come at me, bros. Again, you'll be breaking social distancing, though, so please don't do that. So, yeah, we come to some point later in the future when Echo's a bit more grown up, still a teenager, scavenging for junk in Liverchester, which...
I wrote this down. It's like, really?
I mean, I'm a Brit, folks, right? I know that's hard to believe sometimes.
That's why you hate this show.
Certain, like, language. No. I mean, I don't hate it for a start. I'm more incredulous because, I mean, Liverchester, like, you know, the events that would cause Manchester and Liverpool to merge together would be the things that would perpetuate an apocalypse.
Yeah.
Bring it about. They wouldn't be the after effects of it, you know. I mean... Like, Mancunians and Scousers have had a long history of hating each other vitriolically. So,
why do they not go with why did they not go with Manpool, do you think?
Well, Manpool's a different kind of show entirely, I will say. So maybe that's for the best. But yeah, so we're getting Echo like scavenging through junk here and talking about how he's basically got no dreams or ambition. That's the motto of Liverchester, which, I mean, apart from the fact that Manchester and Liverpool aren't actually the same place, that is still pretty accurate to what we're told over here.
Wow.
Especially if you're working class.
Oof. Yeah, what was it like? Look down, don't look up.
Pretty much, yeah. But he is enamored with a lot of particular things, like from the history of like what's happened with this post-apocalypse. Like, oh, there's players and equipment. He even has what is his version of the sports almanac from Back to the Future 2. You know, the Bible, of all the players that he's into. So, he's scavenging junk for parts, including, working under the most mayor-looking mayor I've seen in anime in quite some time.
He does pull that off quite well. The suspenders and the dumb hat.
The plastic megaphone.
Yeah. I thought he died in this episode, by the way. Not till after the credits do you learn he made it. And I was like, wait a minute. You've killed the mayor and you're fleeing the scene of the crime? No. But luckily he lived.
How funny would it have been if he had died by something from something completely unrelated, like a heart attack?
Oh, that would have been
unfortunate.
Sad. It'd be
funny though. So, what came to mind with what happened in this next scene, Doc, which I'll describe for you now, folks, which is Echo spots something shiny in the junk and goes over and grabs it and falls into a pile of more junk. But amongst them is a lady. And what did you and I cover earlier this year on a different podcast?
What are you referring to? What are you...
Think about it.
This year, 2020.
Yes. I know it's only been 4 months, but by God, it's been a long time, so I don't blame you for having difficulty in remembering.
We've covered Azokin and Jeweler Richard.
Not an anime, strictly speaking.
Oh! Alita.
Yeah, that was the first thing that popped into my head when he found I'll give a name now just for the sake of simplicity, because it's given to her later in the episode. Her name is Mew, as in the number 12 from Greek. So
yeah. This seems to happen a lot in... I'm sorry, you go ahead.
Oh, no. I was just saying, I learned that from BlazBlue, actually. If this is not me, revealing that I have a classical Greek education or anything like that. I wish I could say I did, but sadly that's not true.
The move from BlazBlue is who I thought of first. This seems to happen quite a bit, by the way, in mecha shows where the sort of mysterious, kind of spiritual, or like, lady with hidden powers, very kind of dreamy, like otherworldly, perhaps in some ways, like Eureka, of course, from Eureka 7. Was it Nina? Was she called from Gurren Lagann? They find her in a chest in the middle of the episode, like in the middle of the series. The lady from Outlaw Star, they find her in like a tube in, I think, episode 2.
You mean River?
Is that what she's
called? Yeah, I made the Firefly joke. No, that's the Firefly joke.
Yeah. So like this is a very common move, a move we've seen before. And again, I just wanted to point it out just to point it out. It's not like it's not a value judgment. If anything, it's sort of like it's just a signpost for the sort of thing that we're in for story-wise, like that we are firmly in, I think, the established territory mecha series-wise, maybe. That may, I don't know, make feel a little bit more like comfort food. When these kind of things come up that I've seen a bunch. But like, unlike a lot of the ladies that get found in boxes or whatever, I think that our girl Moo has a much different and refreshingly pleasing personality compared to, again, a lot of the ladies that get found in these shows.
Yep, that I will definitely agree with you on, and we'll certainly elaborate on that later. So Echo takes Moo back to the Oasis pub, where the special is the Champagne Supernova, of course.
Yes.
Because of course is. By the way, I don't know if this is intentional or not. I'm going to assume it's not, because this band is definitely not British to my memory. But there is also a advertisement for the Dream Theater on the
they're not British. I assume they were, because it was just they such might an be. I
sign. Can't remember.
I'm going to Google it right now.
Really, yeah, please do and fill that in, because I noticed I was like, fair enough then. So we get a scene here in which we are introduced to Echo's sister, who is not given a name.
Progressive metal band. That's disappointing. Come on.
There we go. I'm going to assume that that's not an intentional reference then. It's just literally they wrote the Dream Theater without realizing.
Oh, it has to be. No way. Like, listen, I don't think, no. It must be then that we're going to open up the rock reference book to include, other locales than the UK.
Possibly, but we'll see. I mean, this is going to start very dangerously into the territory of seeing like faces in burnt toast, for example. So let's be careful with that.
Oh, it's the Virgin Mary.
It's my dad.
What's the title of the next episode? Did they say it on the preview? Because I can't remember.
I don't think they did. I could be wrong on that. Place your bets now on what it'll be. I'm expecting it's going to be Park Life. That'll be my guess.
I want to be adored.
Anyway. All right, so Echo takes Mew back to the pub, which is where his sister works. And as his sister has not been given a name, I'm just going to call her Echo. No, I'm not really. That's too difficult. We'll just call Echo's sister. And they're looking over Mew, finding out what's going on. And it's at this point that she's revealed to be a player. And I'm sorry, but I could not take this term seriously whatsoever, because I kept thinking of it as player as in like someone who crawls bars, for example, and chats to women. Like player. Or possibly also as video game player.
Like that from now on.
Yeah, I'm sorry, but that term, and I'm going to discuss this in a talking point later.
The sister's name is Swell. So she's Swell Wreck. That's awesome. I love that.
Okay, I'll give him that. That's pretty cool. So it turns out she's a player. I know that's not a reference to something out of a hip-hop lyric, I should stress. But rather she has inbuilt audio equipment and a jack on the back of her spine. This results in a comedy moment, and I say comedy with the loosest possible meaning of it, because I found this scene grating.
Aww.
I was like, I really don't care for this kind of comedy, and I will explain why later, where Echo is marveling at her hole, and just like they have in the books.
In the book.
He's not referring to that specific hole, if you know what I mean. He is referring to the one on her back. And no, I'm not referring to that one either. I'm referring to the one on her spine that's meant to be a giant audio jack. But yeah, I'll talk about it later. Nonetheless, they're looking over, and Mew, of course, wakes up and punches him out. Deserved, I would say. Any hole, is something you shouldn't be staring at, to be quite honest, especially not in that manner. Especially not lifting up her skirt.
Don't lift up the sheets.
Yeah, don't do that. But then, Mr. Mayor, the most mayor that ever mayored in mayor of ever, he turns up and starts complaining that a player has turned up to his bar in the same way that I think that people complain that witches turn up to pubs as well. Because that's the mood I got from this.
Oh, totally. I have this as a note, about the comparison. Yeah. I also just wanted to point out that the mayor has his PhD, Shadon. His player-hating degree.
Was that an honorary one? I don't think he needed to go and have any formal education in that. But yeah, he is reacting to her in the same way that, people react to witches, basically, like, get out of my town! You bring nothing but trouble!
Yep.
Even though you fight the trouble that, really causes problems for us. Which I think is revealed at this point to be the earless, who are like fuzzy black shapes with actual ears, confusingly enough. That, by the way, is all we learn the moment about the earless, and I'm actually okay with that, as you mentioned before, about how, not everything needs to be revealed up front. We'll learn about this in time. And indeed, sometimes it's actually to a story's benefit not to necessarily even go that deeply into its world-building details, if that's not the point of it. We are only into episode 1, of course, so we'll see about that. But anyway, what was swell, as you say, she intervenes, though, with what I will credit this show as some very nice-looking anime beer. As, an alcohol connoisseur myself, I would definitely, give that a drink if I had one of them. So the mayor's distracted by the sweet siren song of alcohol while the Echo and Mew go upstairs, and they start talking about what's going on in the world, and also this is where we get another comedy moment, quote unquote, where look,
she thought he was going to pull it out.
Well, I mean, it was fair to say that Echo wanted to show her his junk.
Yeah. See,
I'm right. That's not even an accurate. That's not even an accurate assessment of what's happening here.
I liked both of these moments. I thought that they were cleverly written enough for me to be funny. At least, more effort seemed to be put into the writing them than is typically done. I felt that with this kind of comedy in anime, I enjoyed these, and they were both very small and were over almost immediately.
I unfortunately disagree, although I will also state at this point that they in no way actually angered me. I just felt by them, tired even a little bit. I mean, it's all entirely innocent on Echo's part, which is a good thing, I should stress. There's so many times when you would have a different male character in his shoes who would actually be completely aware of the, the sexual comedy at play here, and he'd be like, "No, I didn't mean that," but whereas he's just completely not.
Yeah, I think that's part of it. That's part of what I appreciate about it is he Echo is so innocent, he's just not a lech at all. The joke is on really us, the audience, for thinking that. And of course, Moo reacts to it as we would, as the audience would, but Echo is just such a babe in the woods when it comes to these situations. That I felt like that kind of innocence helps the scene from descending into actual kind of yucky territory. To where it was all silly, this is a misunderstanding, and again, it was resolved so quickly.
Yeah, I'm still not really all that hot on it myself, but I'll elaborate on that later because it ties into a wider problem I have with this episode as presented thus far. Anyway, so the main thing that we get from this particular discussion between the pair of them is that Echo has been building a piece of equipment. What is equipment, you might ask, because it's actually a proper noun in this show. It is an amp, basically for a guitar. However, this amp will turn into a giant robot if plugged into a player. It will assume its gig form, no less. You know? So, take note of all the terminology that's being thrown out here, because that's something else I'll be discussing when we get to the talking points as well. So,
luckily, it's
all
not made-up words. You know what I mean? It's words
it's not
It's
not neologisms.
Yeah, and we can kind of at least guess at partially at their function based on them being words that we know and use.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I actually think that's somewhat the show's detriment, but I will explain again later when we get to that point. But anyway, so Mew is basically all on board with this. Like, she says, hey, look, right, why don't we take this out for a test run and go defeat the Earless, go fight them off. And Echo's like, nah, I'm good. Just gonna chill, here and root through the junk and all that. The Earless don't really attack here. I don't really want to leave town. I've got no aspirations and all that. I mean, I'm just a regular dude. I can't be a player's partner. Whereas I think the word he's actually looking for, and I suspect the role he will fulfill in the end, is as a roadie, or the equivalent thereof in this show. But anyway, so Mew becomes indignant with this because
he'll be more than a roadie.
Oh yeah, he'll be doing all that. Yes, he'll get a hang on it eventually. But Mew decides to leave, and in doing so, unfortunately, Echo's junk breaks. Ha ha ha.
No.
Oh no, my junk. Yep. So Swell actually sees Mew out and gives her some money to go get a train out of town the following morning, remarking in a way that I think he's meant to discuss the actual full situation rather than just the jukebox she's working on, that this can't be fixed. But, we get to the following morning after they've all parted, and wouldn't you know, Echo was wrong. The Earless are indeed attacking. They have come to take out the, the Statue of Admonishment, which I'm fairly certain is a musical symbol. I don't recognize it myself.
Yep. It is a musical note, and was it 10 years ago that it was erected because all the music stopped, and the message of admonishment was what we heard in the beginning, was stop dreaming. No one have aspirations. Look down, not up. You're all ordinary human trash. Don't try to live beyond that.
A boot stamping on a human face forever is all well once wrote.
Just keep your nose to the grindstone and work, then we'll all stay out of trouble. That kind of nonsense.
Mm-hmm. So the Earless do indeed attack the town. Poor Liverchester, having all these natural disasters where giant fuzzy black mice attack them. Bit unfortunate. So Echo decides to go run and find Mew and actually take the fight to them. He has a change of heart, essentially. And indeed, he manages to catch up to it, but he falls.
I would say it's less that he has a change of heart in terms of, fighting the bad guys, and more he's concerned for is it Moo or New?
Moo.
Okay, with
New is number 13. Moo.
Yeah, he's concerned for Moo. More so than thinking he'll take the fight to them, I think. But I mean, I don't know. Actually, that could be because Swell does say, "Hey, you're gonna need this." At first, I love that she's like, "Don't go, but little bro." Wait a minute, no, you have to. You guys are the only ones that can do this. You're right. So he does sort of go and with the amp in hand. And
Mm-hmm.
I feel I feel like that there's further change that happens in his character during the fall, but I'll talk about that. But yeah, again, the way I was reading it, I'll say, is that it was more about helping Moo than actually swashbuckling and fighting and doing danger stuff.
Oh no, yeah.
But anyway, please proceed.
Mm-hmm. So he does, as you say, manage to catch up to her, but then falls through a hole in the junk pile just beneath the monument, the statue. And during this incredibly long falling sequence, and it's funny that you mentioned that Dai Sato wrote Cowboy Bebop, because that theme, when Spike is falling from the church, was playing in my head while this was happening.
Always the green bird.
And always, yeah, green bird, he mentions, no, I don't want to die. There's so much I can still do. From being incredibly apathetic earlier in the show's run, in fact, the previous evening in the show's actual time frame, he's now had a complete change of heart because he's faced with his own mortality. Mew comes in, makes the save though, and they hook up, his equipment to her. Sorry, and giant robot time.
Yeah,
giant. And I'll credit this, I actually like the visual design of this robot because it's very simple and very basic, which makes sense given, this is something that he put together from bits and bobs he found in this junkyard. Yep. It's not going to be, the most impressive thing off the bat.
It looks so cool, though. I really like the way it looks. I love the design of the robot. And I like the design of the earless, also, that especially the effects, the sort of... It almost looks like torn paper or burning flame at the edges of their skin, of their bodies, rather, that are... Beside their hands have those very definite outlines, but, this almost quote-unquote fur, is sort of always rippling or flaming around the edges of their torso and limbs and legs, and I thought that looked really neat.
Yeah, they look all right. I'll discuss it all later because it's all kind of going towards the same point when I get to it. But anyway, so they do manage to fight off the airless, including with one giant refreshing minty blast that takes everything out because green's the colour of hair. And after that, that's basically it. They decide to leave town after the mayor gives them a little speech saying, "Hey, you know what? There used to be dreamers like you all around here." So they're going on a road trip basically now. They're going touring, which I suppose is the correct term for this. So in the credits, actually, as they play, the episode continues. So the mayor does indeed survive, and he mentions a gentleman named Jimmy Stonefree, and I was like, "Oh my god,
so good, Jimmy Stonefree!"
Because Stonefree, of course, was a song by Jimi Hendrix.
Yeah.
I have a very strong suspicion that Jimmy Stonefree is the gentleman who we see in the flashback at the very start of the episode.
I definitely know that's the case. 100%. If you look on the Mal page and you go to his character, there he be.
Now that's cheating, Doc.
Well, I want
Are you
to
a
get the
GameFAQs
names.
user?
Listen, no.
Are you a GameFAQs user?
I want the
Do
names
you look
in
up
front
LPs?
Of me. Maybe that might happen.
You dirty casual, honestly.
Yeah, and there's...
Are you going to watch a speedrun of listeners in order to understand how to get the most out of it?
Well, I will tell you this for free also, that Jimmy Stonefree is voiced by Jun Fukuyama.
Shit.
Who's great. Who's superb. Also, one of the ladies that in his almanac, for lack of a better word, in Echo's book that he talks about is Billin Valentine. And I know that she's not just going to be a picture that we see that one time, because she's got, Nana Mizuki credited with voice acting her. So she will be, whether it's in flashback or in the current timeline, she'll have a voiced role and we'll see more of her.
Fair play. All right, then. Yeah, there's actually a whole load of characters introduced in the... I think in the credits sequence... Sorry, now I'm getting mixed up with Eureka 7, actually, which I just watched earlier. Ugh, ignore me. Sorry, apologies. So, yeah, they get sent on their way, but then we are introduced to 3 shadowy figures, and I was like, oh, I'm so glad that Yoko Taro guest directed this scene. Because we've got 9S, we've got 2B, and we've got A2 piloting their own, giant robots.
They are called Ein, Zindi, and Stür, respectively.
Ein, Zindi, and Stür.
Mm-hmm. All with the surname Newbouten.
I have no idea what that means right now, but I'm sure that's a reference to something.
But
we will find out.
They were definitely Yorha, I'll just say.
Yeah, that was the most Yorha shit ever. Put a note in that because that's going to be part of my criticism of the entire episode, believe it or not, but we'll get to that soon enough. Otherwise, that's pretty much it. They mention, "We found you." And I'm presuming by which, like, I wish there was a comedy shot of them looking at, like, the last remaining McDonald's on Earth or something like that. But that's not what we got, unfortunately. And that's the episode. Echo and Mew are on, a train traveling to parts unknown to go fight the Airless somehow, however that'll be. But again, first episode, they'll figure that out in time, no doubt. Right. So that concludes our discussion. Let's go to talking points. Doc, I'm going to chuck this over to you firstly.
Sure. So, I thought that the show had a really sort of easily legible thematic through line this episode, and that was like Echo's kind of journey is such a word I don't want to use because that like there's a lot of time and length implied in that, but like we see that he has all this baggage right in the beginning, that he's been told his whole life not to dream, to only work and eke out a living, and that's the best and only way to live. Even the dudes watching the robot fight on the jukebox are reprimanded by the mayor because you're gonna stir up trouble, like you're gonna rebel or
TV
whatever.
rots your brains, to be fair.
Yeah, that's fair. No, none of that wrestling. It's bad for you. Bad for your mind and your soul, your eternal soul. So yeah, he has been like that. That is a message that he has played and largely accepted up to this point. Except, he has his little dream, right? But it's not a dream in the way that like we think of dreams. Really, it's like when we think of like a dream that we have, we think of like something we want to accomplish or do or like achieve or have. But he like it's less of like a dream in that sense and more of like he is like content to live kind of far removed and have secondhand exposure to greatness and great things and actually doing things in the world. He like is, like you said, tested when Mu tells him, hey, let's go. Like, you showed me your cool equipment and you told me what it's for. I'm a player. All the pieces are here. We can go now. And he's like, well, actually, this dream is really just about thinking about it. Like, I get my like little pleasure and satisfaction from just thinking about how neat all that stuff is, but actually making changes in the world and doing something and leaving and really growing is too hard, and it's not what we're supposed to do. I've been told it's dangerous. And because of like the disruptive presence in his life of Mu, and him, he meets her and quickly, like, she's someone that he like takes a liking to, like cares about, in some way, enough to where like if she's in the line of fire and she's in danger, he's going to go and save her. But then when he does that, that's a big step, him going out there and going after everything, attacking Mu. But I think even then he feels like he's going to go and watch. He's going to go and make sure she has the equipment and be off at a distance. But then he has a near-death experience, right? And that activates him. Like, he, in that moment, like, realizes, hey, I don't want to simply exist at a distance from my dream and see other people do things. Like, I actually want to do them. I want to be the one to change things. Like, I want to grow. I want to live and experience more than what I've been given. And then he has a chance to, and he joins up with Mu, and they make beautiful music together, and form this robot and have this incredible action sequence. But just that whole, I actually really enjoy the idea here of like the show saying it's not enough to get pleasure from thinking about your goals. Like it's that actually doesn't do anything or make any change or produce any results. Like that may be kind of comforting for you in the moment, right?
It's very safe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is safe. You were at a very safe distance, but like actually taking risks and doing things like is it's a step from that, like especially someone who's been conditioned to think and feel like Echo, but like it's a necessary step to grow up, to like sort of fully activate your humanity and be a change agent, and like not even that, but like just to make things better and like to move things forward and improve your situation and help other people. It takes more than like, again, just ruminating on like cool stuff. Like you actually have to get out there and make the cool stuff happen. And I actually really like I enjoyed the sort of epiphany moment. Like I think, I do think like a near-death experience is a pretty valid way to introduce a drastic change in thinking. And when we saw like Canute in Vinland Saga have such a huge about face, like so quickly, I think the show isn't like the stakes are not nearly that high and the emotional tension isn't up to that level yet or anything, but we do get that kind of like near-death experience again, and again I think then it's fair play to have him like have an exponential kind of boost for his we don't have to have a bunch of episodes of him kind of figuring this out. It's like all the pieces were there in his mind. It just took that really profound experience to like push him over the edge and put him together and say like,
you got to get green-birded. That's the thing.
Exactly. You're like, oh my God, like I have to like start living my life. Like what am I doing? Like my existence has just really been like to be this passive being. And I don't want to necessarily like get into Heidegger or Heideggerian theory, but he actually talks about like sort of human life before and after your first encounter with death, and like how existence in terms of like real self-reflection and like thinking about being and thinking about existence in a real metaphysical way, like all that doesn't really start until you had an encounter with death. And just on a like real sort of basic level, that I feel like that's happening here, and I really, really dug that.
All right, my response to that, the irony is I've just realised we've also not done our Patron questions, which we should do, but funnily enough, answering those questions will help me respond to your point in turn. What I will say firstly, Doc, is I agree with your sentiment, but I don't think the episode executes on that properly. Or sufficiently enough for me to actually really get behind Echo's journey in this particular like first 24 minutes of the show's run. And to answer why that is for me personally, it now falls to us to talk about our Patron questions. And we have two of them. One of them firstly comes from Kate Rose. And Kate's question is, what are your biggest hopes and fears for this show? Now, I'm not going to lie here when I answer this question firstly. No, it wasn't. That was completely unintentional. So I'm not going to lie here. Like when I saw like the art for listeners and what I believed it was about, I made the mistakes I've made so many times when I'm getting previews of anime, which is I have a wildly different preconception of what they'll end up being about, as opposed to what they actually are. I didn't even realise there was going to be any giant robot stuff in this. I never saw the PV for this, for example, or the trailer. I thought it was going to be road trip anime where we go and play music at places and like meet people and like have individual stories. So that's my fault, by the way.
You should like. Over the years, I have found that going in blind with no expectations is like the best way to do it.
It really is, but I suppose you also can't really help it. Like when you there's always going to be some amount of preconception you will bring to the table. Like, and
yeah, especially if you know like a person working on it.
So my hope for it was we were going to get something like that, because I thought, hey, that sounds like a neat idea. I like this. It's a very basic premise, but it works. And here's the thing. I think the premise as written does still work, but the biggest fear I have for this show is that it currently, to me, hasn't put enough meat on the bone with regards to its character drama for it to really hit home for me. Like, I get exactly what you're saying there with like Echo's journey in this episode, but I think that I don't think it worked for me, and I'll tell you why. And this, funnily enough, leads into our second question. But actually, before we get to that, I'll let you fire off an answer to Kate's question firstly, Doc.
Oh, I guess so. My biggest hopes and fears. Well, I guess like my biggest fear is that maybe the show. Well, so a fear is that the show does kind of just play in the sandbox of the things it's referring to and not kind of try to do its own thing. I don't see like a ton of evidence for that happening. I mean, there's a lot of visual similarities to Eureka 7. You know, there's a lot of there are some similar beats for sure. But I'm hopeful. You know, it's one episode. So I think for me, sufficient groundwork for the characters has been laid. Like, I like both of them. I like all three. I mean, I don't know how much Swell is going to be in the show going forward, but she ruled. I like Echo because I kind of feel called out by him in some ways, and his way of living up to like his sort of only kind of wanting, like, I don't think of myself as a trash person and only look down, don't look. It's not that severe, but like, you could maybe go like 1 or 2 octaves up, and if a character was saying like, "I only want to live,"
nice musical reference.
I'll try to keep it up. Like a character could only be saying, "I just want to live a comfortable life," and it struck a similar note to me of like someone who taking real action in the world was like too much, too risky. And I also am a fan of like, again, characters who have these messages dumped into their brain at childhood and kind of are trying to escape them, because I personally identify with that. And I thought that, like, yeah, to me there was enough there to get behind them. And I don't think that there's any big reason right now for me to fear like, oh, this is just going to be Eureka 7 full stop. You know, I think, you know, the fact that Dai Sato wrote it, I guess, you know, you could have that fear. But surely he's thinking, I can't just write the same thing again. My hopes for the show is that it will...
Hasn't stopped Hirohiko Araki, but hey, there we go.
My hopes for the show is that it just kind of keeps building on this foundation that it lays, and I'm fine with it telling a familiar story. You know, I feel like I just want it to... I want it to tell it in its own way, and I want these two characters to get their due. I know that there is going to be a much larger cast introduced. Like, the character page is really big. So hopefully, you know, everybody gets sufficient time that's warranted. And I actually have a lot of confidence in Dai Sato as a writer. So I'm actually not... I'm not super worried. I like where the show is at, and yeah, I'm super into Mu. I love that her, like, this is not to slag off Gurren Lagann or Eureka 7 at all, but I love the fact that Mu is a little fireball. Sorry, little is probably derisive. I didn't mean it that way, but I love that she is just so spunky and up for the fight and wants to get shit done, and is not like a kind of lilting flower or like tee hee hee, I need your help. Like, she's she seems like
it's
a badass. It's
quite noble, actually, when you say that. It's quite noble when you say that, actually, that I forgot to mention that Mew does have amnesia. The Battle Angel Elisa reference was not entirely without merit.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
But the thing I liked, and was to her credit as a character, was that she recognizes she has it. She's like, whatever, I'll just get on with it. You know, I know what I need to do. I'm not going to dwell on the small details right now. Maybe they'll become relevant later.
Yes.
So that was definitely to her credit.
Great.
I agree.
Yeah.
To address something you said, though, Doc, like about the idea of foundation, I actually have the opposite problem where I'm worried that because I personally felt we didn't get enough foundation here, which I will make apparent in a little while as to why I think that I fear now with them literally leaving Echo's hometown that we won't get the necessary fleshing out that I feel it needed. Now, we are probably going to disagree heavily on that, and will come time, you know, I'm going to get out the boxing gloves, you get out the knives, you know, it'll be like the Anchorman fight. You know, choose your weapon, choose your warrior.
I don't think we need to stay in the hometown to get more into Echo.
I'm not. Oh no. I'm not saying they need to stay, but rather I think that the prime opportunity for some of the foundation I feel is missing is now gone because they have left. I'm saying that there should have been more done in this episode to flesh that out, and I will elaborate why when we get to our next Patron question, because funnily enough, answering this question actually helped me get in my thoughts together on why I had such a difficult time thinking of this episode as anything more than just kind of, it's all right, it's okay, yeah. So anyway, the next question, this one comes from Emily Rand and says, what do you think of the Eureka 7 comparisons, and do you think Dai Sato will be able to tell this story within the given time frame? So, I was today years old when I started watching Eureka 7. I'm very, very happy to admit that, because I didn't want to simply come into this question by going, I've never seen it, so sorry. Which I actually think is probably a good way of doing it, because funny enough, you have seen all of Eureka 7, I believe.
Oh yeah, it's really, really good. I mean, it's
like 50 episodes as well, isn't it?
It is.
It's a long show.
And there's a sequel show that I don't think people feel, Eureka 7 AO. I don't think people feel that's essential viewing.
They didn't call it Eureka 8. Oh, God damn, it was so easy.
AO.
It was gift wrap for them.
There's also some movies that are like that play with the I don't know exactly how they fit into the continuity. So I think the newer ones might be retellings and the older ones might be sequels. So
Macross False Songstress and Wings of Goodbye style?
No,
that kind of thing. Not quite. Oh, all right.
I am not well versed enough to know exactly. I mean, it could be, but I don't think that's it. Yeah, I don't know. Well, write in and let us know. I should have probably read that before, but the TV series I'm familiar with, although I haven't seen it in about 10 years. So some of the specifics are...
Better get on those nootropics then, you know, get your brain pills in. Time to start remembering, Doc.
I gotta get Paul Joseph Watson on the line and get me some more pills.
Nah, you know, you might as well swallow snake oil instead. Anyway, the reason I'm bringing that up is because we're actually well positioned here, because I have only seen the first episode of Eureka 7 or Eureka 7 or whatever 7, you know, S Club 7, I don't fucking care. And I think that makes it like really good for me to be able to draw a 1-to-1 comparison between the first episode of that show versus this one, and where I think Eureka 7 succeeds where Listeners episode 1 fails. And that's mostly around how Renton is portrayed versus how Echo is portrayed. Because it's made very clear. Well, there's that. I'm not going to necessarily, you know, say that giant hovering surfboard mechs is you know, that wins.
Yeah.
That wins easily. I mean, okay, giant like robot performing a gig that destroys the world, that's pretty out there. That's pretty metal, don't get me wrong. But surfboarding robots by default, I mean, how can you beat that? How can you top that?
I think those are designed by Shoji Kawamori as well.
That does not actually surprise me in the slightest now that you've told me that. That's like revealing to me suddenly that gravity is a constant downwards force. Like, holy shit. Like, if Karamori's going to design anything, it's going to be mechs or fighter jets or mech fighter jets. I mean, if you ask Karamori to design, like, you know, a coffee machine, and it turns out, or it transforms into a little drone, and you ask Shocks at that, you're an idiot. I'm just going to throw that out there. Anyway, moving away from Karamori and his, you know, want to design transforming objects, the thing about Renton that I noticed in the first episode of Eureka 7 is that it's made very clear what all of the external pressures are on him that makes him dissatisfied with his life. So, For a start, it's his school environment. Secondly, also how he is the son of a great hero who is long since gone. So he's got no father figure. He's got no mother either, nor sister. And his, his fellows at school are always constantly making comparisons like, you're so lame compared to your dad. Like, how can you even be from the same family? His grandfather's got a road maps out for him already that he's just going to become a mechanic. And funnily enough, even in the first episode, his grandfather, while we don't want him to simply just become a mechanic, because then there would be no story and no show, like, his reasoning is entirely sympathetic in terms of, oh, I lost one son to the military before. Do you think I'm going to lose, my grandson, my other, the other kid I'm raising to them as well? If he has to play it safe, then he will. So, and then, of course, his, favourite, I don't know what the name for the surfboards are, so I'll just call it, air surfing spot. His favourite air surfing spot is taken by the military. His world is getting smaller and smaller, so he's feeling like he's getting pressure and wants to burst out from it. I thought that was really, really well done in the first episode, Eric 7. I understood intimately what was going on with him, why he wanted to get out, and also that, the pressure was rising on him to do something. Whereas in this episode, for listeners that is, I really, really struggled to connect with Echo because I didn't feel a sense of what made him the way he is in terms of his, mindset about, always look down on that. We get a scene of the mayor yell. Yeah, I believe that because he's only telling us it after the time skip. The mayor is yelling that to him, but there doesn't seem to be any thing that's forcing him to stay. In terms of, the government or whoever's running this salvage operation, he could go anytime he wants. And this is why I have a feeling that this is something I hope this is why I think this is something that the show will probably elaborate more on, maybe with flashbacks as it goes along. There's not a lost opportunity for it to develop this. But all we really get is that he tells us that's what he's been told. But we don't see, him, trying to scavenge the parts for the equipment. He just has it. It's there. It's been built. I wish there'd been more build up to him building that and him maybe having parts confiscated or being shunned away from doing it. His sister seems very supportive in general.
Yeah.
He doesn't seem to be in any great under great pressure, to say take over the bar or anything like that. I just felt like there wasn't a lot of external pressure on him. Really.
There's whatever not. It's all internal.
Yeah, but what made that internal pressure stick with him? What forces exert that on him even today?
Well, he's
I feel
heard
like
it
we've
ever
skipped
since
something
he was a
that
child.
Made
that's
yes,
been
but
what's been drummed
we're not
into him.
shown that.
Well, we see enough.
We're not shown that.
We see enough of it, in my opinion. In the first few minutes of the episode.
But the thing is, we've got to the point where he says that he feels that way, and I believe him. Don't get me wrong, but we've skipped the point which shows us him developing stat. So in the absence of continual external factors, I'm not saying that it has to go with that Eureka 7 formula where we see that as we do with Renton, but in Renton's case, I think that works for him. But in the absence of that, where it's now very internalized, I feel in order for me to definitely get on board with him, I wish there'd been more either hints or maybe evidence of him getting to that point. Maybe an intermediary scene where we see him not quite as young as he was in the flashback at the gig, but not as old as he is in the current timeline, where he has ambition and ideas, but they're drilled out of him for, drummed out of him for whatever reason.
I don't think he ever had them, because from when he was a little kid, he's had. I know. I thought to me it was very efficient about the way that it conveyed it, both in the beginning and when he's talking to Moo, and how he kind of backs off from what he needs to do, coupled with again how he tells us it was for him, and we see kind of what his life is like in the very beginning of the episode, to his sort of very sort of what's the right way to put it? He's not very assertive. He has been pushed into a shell by the kind of local community around him, and most people are that way. I think. I mean, you have the two people that are watching the robot fight, and they shouldn't be. But I just think he's really internalized the message, and I thought to me, I thought it was conveyed in a the show did enough to convey that to me, and I was able to like plug into the character.
You keep doing a really good riff on this, Doc. I appreciate it. But I could play that game too, I tell you. I'm not like, I think it's going to be, for me, it's like kind of a your mileage may vary thing. I just felt very cold and it felt a bit impersonal about how it dealt with all this. Like, I didn't feel the connection I did with Renton. And again, I'm not saying it has to execute that in the same way, but I would want it to leave me with that same kind of feeling where I felt I understood him and got on board with it. And I genuinely didn't with Echo. I just thought, oh, okay, he's like apathetic. He's repressed even a little bit, he's got an internalized message. I don't know how he got to that point. Maybe the show will elaborate on that as it goes along. That's the case,
I don't even think he's apathetic. Like, I wouldn't use that word so much as like...
Well, that's literally what he says. He's like, I don't want to leave, I don't have any needs to leave town, like, but there's nothing stopping him from going. I'd say that's definitely apathy, especially in the face of what...
I think...
In space of what Muse says about, like, going find the earless. He has the needs to, it's like, nah, I'm good. That's apathy to me.
Well, I think that seems like a kind of sort of a cruel way to characterize it. Or maybe just cruel is not the word, but maybe like a uncharitable way, because it feels like he's, I don't think it's much like he doesn't care so much as like he doesn't feel like he ought to do anything, and that's for other people, and that's not what you should be doing. But he maybe has a little
indifference is the better word.
He has a little, but I think he has a little bit of that flame in there because he's collecting the pieces. And he's building the thing, and he thinks equipment and players are amazing. Like, he thinks they're cool, and like he loves. It's like, you're what I aspire to be. I mean, he said the word literally aspire in the Funimation subs. Like, so I mean, he's got. It's just there's like a disconnect there because of his shitty upbringing, not from on the part of Swell, but like just like his kind of belief community and his town is, and the local kind of government situation is like pushing all that down to where he doesn't feel like...
I wish we'd seen more of that. That's the thing though. Like, I wish I had more of that in this very first episode to get me on board with that, as I did with Eric 7 then, if there was that external force, as you say, pushing down on him.
Right. Well, I'm not sure what more... I don't know. I mean, I guess you could say, like, there could have been more, but I just thought the episode was paced so well. And to me, it gave me enough of that. Like, again, the scene when he's telling us, the scene with the mayor talking over them, how he responds to Moo's sort of request to go out and do some fighting. Like, all that was, like, enough to paint the picture. And I guess his kind of general personality and passivity. Again, like, was I found it to be like enough. I'm repeating myself here, but so we can move on to the next point. And you brought up Emily's question, and I'll just say, like, when I first read the question, I thought, oh no, like, she doesn't like Dai Sato. That's why? But like, the whole in the time frame.
I feel like there's an excuse me in your future coming your way, Doc.
No, exactly, yeah. That's what I just...
Let me set the record straight.
Yeah, no. But it's the time frame. Hey! The time frame being, like, the key part. And, like, I checked, and it's a 12-episode show, so... Yeah, I mean, a lot of the...
Are we getting another Sarah's My problem?
A lot of, Eureka 7 is very long, and that's what the visual references will, point to. But, I mean, he's written for other shows that were shorter, He's, granted, like, he only wrote scripts for Fujiko Mine, but that's a shorter show. Standalone Complex, the story arcs were quite short, when there were story arcs. So... and Eden of the East, he wrote for that. His both Kenji Kamiyama. That was like only like 11 episodes and a couple of OAVs. So, like, I think I'm optimistic that he will understand that he's working with a shorter length than what he might be kind of directly referencing with the characters. And I like how you juxtaposed Renton and Echo, because it made me like realize that there are more so even than Eureka and Mu, like differences in these principal cast members. You know, Renton and Echo are very different. Renton is kind of a hothead, whereas Echo is very much not that. So there's to me like there are differences despite like the aesthetic similarities and some of the plot beats.
Yeah. I'd be remiss as well if I didn't mention that the very first episode of Eureka 7 is Blue Monday, which I'm fairly certain is a New Order song.
That is correct.
Although I think that that's where the musical reference is kind of... I mean, there's like tape 1 and tape 2 is the ad break interstitials in Eureka 7, but really the music for that just feels like... or the musical references, rather, feel like a gloss of paint, if you will. Whereas they are much more embedded into the DNA of listeners. Somewhat to its detriment, I would argue, but I'm going to save that for a separate point, which I'll get to in a little while.
Get to it now.
Get to it now. Well, I think just to say with Emily's point there about like finishing with a time frame, I haven't seen all of Eureka 7, so I can't really comment on like where that story goes and if it's necessary to have that many episodes to do. I'd like to assume so. I mean, we are in the time now where anime doesn't really get, any more than 2 seasons max, unless you're Fruits Basket, I suppose, which has got 4 full seasons booked in, which is good because Fruits Basket is amazing and I really, really enjoy it. Mm-hmm. Or if you're Shield Hero, in which case, one more reason to hate, our timeline as it is. But
yeah,
never mind.
Stuff seems to be getting, if it gets multiple seasons, there's like a break between them.
Yeah.
That seems to be more and more common than 50, an entire year's worth of anime being produced.
And also, I'd wager that Eureka 7 was not adapted from a manga. That's a wild guess on my part.
I believe it was an original work, yes.
Yeah, good luck getting an original work that's that many episodes in this current climate. So, purely in terms of, the way in which anime is made, I would hope that whatever story Dai Sato is planning on telling with this, he can do it. I'm going to be optimistic as you are, Doc, not because I had no idea who actually created this show or did the main composition for it until you told me. And given his, given his prodigious credits, I think it's worth putting some faith into him. And as I say, the problems I have with this episode, I really wish it hit the ground running much, much more in the way that Eureka 7 did, not by doing it the same way, but rather with leaving me that same sense of engagement, which I didn't have with this. But that's not to say that it can't be fixed in the next few episodes and have me more on board as a result. So we'll see. I'd like to believe so. The comparisons I have with Eureka 7 are ultimately unfavourable towards listeners in general, I would argue. Although I will admit that for all that I have problems with listeners, embedding the idea of music and particularly the references to bands and terminology so deeply into its own design as a show, I think that's a problem. I'm at least willing to give it the credit for being willing to do so, to go all in on that, which is good. As opposed to Eureka 7, it's hey, we got A side, B side, why not? But again, maybe the music factors more into Eureka 7 later on than I'm giving it credit for right now, because I don't know.
Yeah, I just remember.
We will see.
I remember it's a very stylish show. I didn't. Maybe it was just my cultural ignorance at the time. I don't recall a ton of direct references that are done in this same way as they're done here. Very just out there and upfront. In the way that, like you were saying, JoJo's is with its musical references. Oh gosh, I had another point about Eureka 7, but I don't remember what it was. We can carry on, though.
Fair enough. So that brings us to the end of our Patron questions. Thank you very much for... If you want to become a friend of the pod, that's a really, really high amount of time. But there's an easier way to do it. There is an easy way to do it, folks. And that is if you want to check out our Patreon at patreon.com/Warui Deshou. Get yourself on the $3 tier or higher. You'll get yourself access to our Discord. And in turn, you can then ask us questions about shows we're covering as we do so. So you can get questions week on week about listeners or whatever show we end up covering for our next season of Second Stream, which is our patron-only podcast. Get yourself access to that as well on the $5 tier. We've yet to decide which one that'll that'll actually be yet. We're going to be doing that live on the pod. Two anime enter, one anime leaves. We're going to get beyond Thunderdome. Hell yes.
Will we end up flipping a coin in Google? That's the ultimate question. Will we have a preference?
I thought you and me were going to fight out like Spock and Kirk in that one episode.
We'll see. Stay tuned for that.
Mind you, we're having to, isolate ourselves in our homes, so maybe that'll be a bit difficult. I'll play you at Red Alert. Fuck it, that'll do. So yeah, definitely check out our Patreon, folks. See if anything takes your fancy. Plenty of good stuff coming along in there. All right, so you mentioned about the talking point I had about listeners and its use of terminology in music. Right, okay. Let's reference back to Given for a moment. Given referenced pretty much like a song and episode with its episode titles, and it also had, in the very cute way that Japanese anime often references things like McDenny's, for example, or McDonald's. Like it referenced, I don't remember what the Arctic Monkeys riff was. I'm going to presume they were the Frigid Chimpanzees or something like that. But they were definitely referenced in one of the albums that Oniyama was on. Here's the thing, right? All of the musical references in that show made perfect sense because it was a show partly about music and connecting through that. Now, you might say, well, isn't that listeners? And I'd say, possibly. But I kind of had a real issue with a lot of the terms that the show used here. Like, you mentioned that they were not, completely novel things, like novel words made up for the purpose of the show's fiction. And that can, if that's the case, that can become really difficult to, pass as an audience member, particularly in the first episode, because you do then have to have someone to have exposition to see, what's this mean? What does this term stand for? So keeping it simple can have its benefits, but I think it also kind of robs the show of a little bit of identity as well. Like, this is its gig form, they're players, there's equipment, they're A-lists. It doesn't feel like there's a lot of creativity invested in the show's, lore and fiction here, to be quite honest. I would have preferred either the words be a bit more esoteric, to the point where they're not so simple as gig, or equipment, for example. Equipment's such a plain term for me that I wish it had just been called an amp, to be honest. Because that would have actually fit the idea of what they do with the giant robots. They become able to do more things with it as a result, become more powerful. Whereas equipment just feels too bland for my taste. So
I think they'll probably be different, more than amps, perhaps. We will see.
Well, I mean, the term amp would have suited instead of equipment for the giant robot, because it would have not been so broad as equipment is as a term. And it would have fit the motif of what happens with a gyro, which is become more powerful. That's the thing I'm trying to say there. So I kind of had a problem with how this show struggled, to me, seemed to get its own identity. I mean, when you... God, that's basically all I have to say on that, really. For the moment, I wish there'd been more use of, either novel words or different words that weren't quite so plain, just to give the show a bit more flavour. Additionally, I should stress, I don't understand why they're referencing Oasis in this. I understand. I think, throwing in band names and such can be fun for the kitsch. I understand that's, a JoJo's thing, definitely. But they're only really mentioned as names. They're not really otherwise, part of the DNA of the show. There are some characters who play guitar, Chili Pepper, for example, or whoever his stand users. I can't remember his fucking name. The one that looks like a amped up Tweety from Sylvester and Tweety, the electric one. He plays a guitar. Okay, fair play. But JoJo's music references are just for the kitsch. But listeners kind of, for me, occupies that weird uncanny valley where it is about music, but it's not enough about it to justify referencing Oasis outright in the way they do, including matching the font. It's strange. It occupied an odd space in my head where I was I didn't appreciate what they were trying to do with it. Which sounds very mean on my part. It probably is. Because I'm not trying to, come down too hard on someone who's clearly enamored to the point where they want to, use Oasis both as the name of the bar and also reference the actual band's logo. It can only ever be a good thing, but I wish there was more behind what's going on to justify that. And again, this is something that might happen over time. We at the moment, for example, only know that the A-lists are the big existential threat. They're the Klaxosaurs of this show. Yeah, I'm getting the Franks reference in.
Oh, boy.
I have to say, by the way, like in terms of like shows that we've covered on Stream of Thought, I have a feeling this episode gave me the most like Frank's like memories, at least. And I'm talking specifically about covering the first episode of Frank's, in which I felt kind of mute.
Yeah, like from a design standpoint, and that it's a robot show. Like I got those too, but this was a far better episode.
Yeah.
Than any. I was like, I wish Frank's was this. Like,
well, it was less stupid than Frank's, that's for sure. But I think like like what the A-list ultimately going to represent. Like, I wish there was more to it at this point. Again,
but give it some time. Yeah, give it some time.
Yeah,
I think
I know, but
like there a lot of what you're saying. I think we got to give the show a little bit of rope to demonstrate. There's first episode, you got to do a lot of things, please a lot of different people, establish a lot of different things, and pull in different people. With different things, and kind of have to have more different things going on than you usually do in any given other episode of the show. So, like, yeah, in terms of the lore, like, I'm willing to give it time. I mean, I understand what you're saying about the kind of very straightforward nature of it. It didn't bother me. I thought, I appreciate sort of the silliness of it, like the spirited silliness of it. And I will take it any day of the fucking week as long as we don't get nonsense. It's the Flugenglorbin. Like, put it into the Schuberdoob. Like, God, fuck off with that. No, thank you.
Yeah, no technobabble. I am very much in agreement with that. There's a fine line to be balanced, I think, here, to be hit.
I know what you mean, though. Like, like giving it something with a little bit more bite or pizzazz.
Yeah, putting some spice into it, basically. Like, and I have to say as well, just as a side note, this side is also my issue with trying to find the identity of this show and really struggling. Like, I made that Battle Angel Alita joke, and that Witcher joke, and that Nier joke, all mostly in jest, but also with a hint of truth that I found it difficult to find what this show ultimately has that makes it stick out without making me think of other things. I'm sorry, but I cannot believe for a second that those three we meet at the end of this episode were not directly inspired by Nier Automata. It's the point where if someone were to say they were a ripoff, apart from the giant robot element, I would not, like, I would see where they're coming from. I would disagree, but, like, it's not a case of where I could flat out go, no, you're talking nonsense. Like, I could kind of see where they're coming from with that.
Oh, the designs are 100% like referencing that in a unambiguous way. There's no doubt.
Yeah. So what point? So I suppose the question we have to ask there is: at what point does it become a homage, or is it a ripoff? I'm not sure, and I'm gonna have to wait for the rest of the show to play out to get a proper handle on that. But yeah, I feel like the show to me, like, with all these things I've mentioned, like the very plain terminology, the fact that, I swear to God, like the conversation that played out between the mayor and Mew, like it felt like I was listening to Geralt again, and any random, townfolk coming in and saying, we don't like your Witcher kind here. Like,
oh, I like that. I thought that was very, like, that is what would happen if beings like players existed.
Yeah, I suppose
it is what happened to women that were gifted healers in in the real American times. They're like, you're a fucking witch. You know what I mean? Like, kill you. Sort of that whole problem of not being able to disambiguate the problem from the solution to the problem when you don't really understand either one or how they work. Like, I don't know, it felt very, again, like, like if the world was set up like this, I would expect people to fear these beings, players.
Yeah, I'm not saying it doesn't make any logical sense here. It absolutely does, as you say, at least even within, what the show has presented to us thus far. But I feel like that, sometimes making too much sense can be a detriment if it makes things feel indistinct. I feel like, as much as, like, I like the idea of, like, hey, you've got an amp that turns into a giant robot, that's all that currently the show has really given me in terms of what makes it feel unique. Like, that makes it stick out to me. And everything else feels, honestly, kind of derivative. I'm sorry, but that's how it feels to me.
I get where you're coming from. Like, I I guess I just don't like novelty isn't necessarily a thing I'm looking for out of this. Like, I just with Dai Sato especially, like I think like I have a lot of expectations for the execution, and I am again still feeling optimistic that we will get that. I'm willing to let I'm not going to judge like if there are elements in the show that this episode like there weren't enough or whatever, like my mantra right now is like we'll give it time, we'll give it some episodes, but for what was there and what was established, it gave me a lot of hope that I'm gonna like the show. And again, I think the execution on what has been established will be quite good. But yeah, no, it is definitely like it's got its references from East and West, and they're very they're billboards. They're very obvious to see. And I mean, whether or not they get played with in a meaningful way, we'll see. If they don't, and there's just referential, like it's just in the way that a lot of music is, you know what I mean? Like a lot of pop music, when you are referencing a different song, it's not because you want to do something amazing with it. It's just you want to cover it, or you want to just be a reference of it. You know what I mean?
That's funny. That's how I describe Listeners as I see it right now, which is it's just kind of an average cover of things I've seen elsewhere. And it doesn't feel very much like its own thing yet. But we will see. We'll see. I suppose I should also get my other talking point out of the way, which is to talk about the comedy. And I hear what you said before about like the idea of it subverting, that it wasn't ultimately about the intimate parts or anything like that. It was just, a bait and switch.
I like a bit of naughty humor when done in a way that isn't just exploitative or yucky.
The thing is though, like the way that particularly the check out her whole scene played out, I was like, I'm so seen this, done it before. Even if it is a mild subversion that he's not really referring to that, like he is still violating her privacy, and she still punches him out in the way that they always do. It felt very tired to me, that kind of humor. Mm-hmm. And I'm not saying again that I'm a complete purist here. I'm quite the opposite, believe me. Like, a good bit of naughty humor every now and again is always welcome, or even shows that are entirely about that. I mean, I still think, God, what was it called again? Why can I not remember it?
Shinometa.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Like, Shinometa is entirely that, and that's great for it. That's absolutely fantastic.
Become cookies. Hey.
Yes, exactly. So, I'm not a prude, but I think that this ties into something I said in Kabukicho Sherlock. And by the way, me referencing that heinous like atrocity of a show, I'm not referencing it as a comparison of quality here, but more just to re-illustrate a point I made back then, which is that for me, like the best kind of comedy is the kind that is crafted inside the fiction of the work itself, like repeated character gags, like this character's a screw up and such, and they keep making like silly goofy mistakes despite how they try. Kagushi Goto, which we will be talking about, had an example of this where it had an example where there was humor that I felt was kind of crass because it was relying on that kind of common comedy playbook kind of thing in society that's tired, lazy, and also, as in Kakushi Goto's case, transphobic, but we'll get to that when we talk about it later in the week. And then it had an example where, this character's trying to escape their past, and yet it literally hits them in the face, and I found that really funny. So there are examples of shows that actually do both, the bad and the good kind. And the thing about, the whole idea of, this girl's got, a thing hidden under a skirt or something like that, or, hey, check out my junk, which, by the way, I wished I had actually been literally what they said, because I'd have probably found it somewhat funny as opposed to not.
And there was a...
not to toot my own horn
there was a third moment also, which was sort of a little bit like it was a single moment, but the lines, the opening line of the joke and the punchline were kind of separated by other parts. Like there was do you remember when Echo was showing her his amp that he put together? And
yes.
He's like, look at this, isn't it incredible? And he plunks it down and shows it to
that
her.
That was
and then a little bit later
that was
she's
a good
like,
line.
It's kind of small, or maybe it's just lame, and he's just sad. And I was like, I don't know, like
I found that funny because that was a good joke. Like he really tried with that one. That was good.
We know
but
he's
the
not
other
just
two
talking about
instances,
his amp. He's talking about this is a joke about his penis. God.
It's about his condenser microphone. Clearly.
So yeah, no, they had a lot like of those dumb like double entendre. I say dumb lovingly because yeah, I you know, and the first joke in particular, like you said, where he's like he sees the jack on her hip, and he sort of has to move the cover to get a better look at it, and it's like she thinks that he's like doing so it's walking a fine line, right, of sort of questionableness, and maybe that one was a little bit over, but I still found it funny. And again, I thought like it felt like a little, again, just doesn't take a lot, but like just a little bit more effort at like cleverness of the misunderstandings were put into how the jokes are written. It made me giggle. Maybe I'm simple. Yeah. Simple man.
No, not at all. Comedy is very much the most subjective thing one can talk about when it comes to fiction. So take it from me, folks. Like, my criticisms of this, like, you know, if you feel differently, then that's absolutely fine and good for you. Like, you know, I'm glad that people do find it funny. But I think that this also ties into my issue with the show's first episode, in that it is the first episode. So when we're already dealing with humor that is very much like, you know, to me, tired and relies on the old tropes that we've seen before of, oh, looks up the skirt and then gets punched in the face. If that's what you're opening with, it doesn't, like, speak much to me. Like, it doesn't really, like, sell the show to me, really, as having its own kind of inventive, unique brand of humour. I mean, I will grant, as you say, though, that it is not, strictly speaking, like, you know, oh, he literally saw the actual naughty parts, you know. It's not quite that.
He doesn't
but
realize
he's still
what he's
going
doing.
for the same.
He's just a dumbass.
Yeah, he's also innocent enough. So there are those points in its favour, but it is still ultimately reaching, in my opinion, for the same overall outcome, especially with the way she reacts, which is to punch him in the face. And by the way, that is not me saying that she shouldn't have done that. She absolutely should. But fiction can be wherever it needs to be, of course. So I would have preferred that the humour be a bit more inventive than relying on this old trope again. And also the similar thing later, I was like, is that also the pitch or the timbre of the humour we're going to get? Yeah, I can do references to musical stuff as well. Come at me. Is that like what we're going to get over and over here rather than any more crafted stuff? I mean, I've been watching Utena recently, and I'm sorry to keep bringing up Ikahara works. It feels unfair. It's like bringing, you know, a shotgun to a knife fight. But like, you know, you get like repeated gags in that one, or gags that involve like creative camera work, or absurdist moments like where, oh, suddenly there's a boxing kangaroo here. Like, you know, there's a lot of well-constructed crafted humour that relies on your understanding of the fiction and the way the world has been built up and the rules inside of it. Whereas here it's just like, oh, we're going to go straight for he's looking at an intimate area, just not the intimate area that you might necessarily think is. I'm like, can we not be a bit more creative?
I think that's all super unfair. Like, just because the show hasn't had time to establish its universe or fiction. I know. So it can't have that kind of comedy. But but you're leveling the criticism. The very criticism is the thing that it literally cannot do because it has not time
I disagree.
to
I think it
establish itself. And it's not an absurdist show either. It's not going to, you're not going to turn around and see, you know, I don't know, the Raisin Bran mascot handing out firecrackers or some other really absurd weirdness. That's not Dai Sato. That's not what the show is going to be.
No. I'm not saying it needs to be like Utena. What I'm just saying is that I wish that the humor was a bit more inventive than what it currently is.
Okay, that's a different, broader kind of than it needs to be based on rules that have been established in the universe already.
No, by when I say rules, I don't even mean necessarily how the world works, but just more character stuff. And granted, that is just somewhat done here with how Echo's completely innocent, but I just wish it wasn't then played into with something I've seen 1,000 times before and don't really care for.
You need a lot of repeated, you need a lot of time for a running gag to actually work. If you do the Full Metal Alchemist thing where they do a repeating gag inside an episode, it just gets fucking old really quick. So like running gags, like you got to give it time to like, you know, set the foundation, do the gag, later have an appropriate moment to do the gag again, you know, that kind of thing. So yeah, like it is, I guess, a fair a fair thing to bring up, though, is like, you know, do you feel like this is sort of the tip of the iceberg and it's only going to get kind of more raunchy as far as the humor goes? Which, I mean, we'll see. That's to be seen. There's a moment that I did quite like, again, that I thought was very comedic and very like efficiently portrayed when he is when Echo kind of undoes his overalls to pull out his book, his junk, as you say, and she covers up and she's like, no, don't show it to me, and then turns and looks at him and realizes he's holding this book, and then she gives him a look like, oh my god, you really don't understand these situations, do you? And I think that is referencing back to the first time, because it's sort of cumulative and building on itself, like, because we have the boy Echo who doesn't understand those kind of the double meaning of a lot of the things he's doing, or the perceived kind of meaning in a social situation of doing those things. So like getting close, trying to take a peek at the jack. Oh, punch! I'm gonna punch you. Oh, wait a minute! You just didn't even realize what you were doing, and then it happened again. And just that quick look that she gave him for like a couple of frames of like, oh my god, like, I hate you. Like, you really are just that innocent. Damn it. Like, I loved that expression.
I suppose, I suppose the final thing I'll say is that what it reminded me of a little bit, but not entirely, was the crude humour in Made in Abyss, which, phenomenal show, don't get me wrong, but the scenes, like, for example, with, I don't remember the lead man's name, checking out, like, Reg's junk, the literal junk, even though he is a robot. Oh, I'm cringing thinking about that scene. Like, it reminded me of that. It wasn't as bad as that, but it reminded me of that in the same way, in the absence of coming up with their own comedy. And maybe I'm being too strict in what I mean by rules and such. Like, I'm talking maybe more the rules of comedy inside the show itself, like, you know, how it builds things up. And I think that is possible to do even within the first episode. Not like maybe for more than one gag, but I probably need to maybe flesh this more out in actual, like, proper article form or something to truly get what I'm trying to say here. I certainly don't think it's so strict.
It's hard
as, like,
to talk about comedy. Know. I find it very difficult. Yeah. But like, the thing I'm saying about Made in Abyss is it reminded me of that, where in the absence of coming up with their own, like, you know, this is humour very specific to this show, which I suppose is what I'm really trying to get at here, where it feels like its own unique thing. Like, you could point to, like, the stuff, for example, I mentioned in Utena, like the boxing kangaroo, or anything involving Choo Choo, for example. That's Utena. That's unique to that. You won't really see that elsewhere. You can point to similar comedic beats in other Ikuhara shows because it's the same creator, but it's very much a thing that's specific to that work. Whereas what I see here, save for the little bit of, like, the asterisks of, like, oh, he's actually innocent and he's not really looking at her, you know, actual private parts. Or he's not gonna pull out his dick and show it
Thank
to her.
Fuck for that.
Whew.
Yeah, thank fuck for that. Like with Made in Abyss, that's not humor that's unique to the show.
Oh, that's a high bar, man.
It's
if you want every show to make, like, craft its own brand of comedy unique to the story, like, that feels difficult. That feels very hard.
It is. I'm not going to pretend it isn't, but I'm also going to say there's not occasionally a time for a silly fart joke or whatever if it's justified. But I'm also again pointing out this is the first episode, so it needs to leave a strong impression on me without also giving away so much, which I will also confess is very hard. I'm not trying to belittle or, like, you know, make light of how difficult it is to get a first episode out that hits all the right notes without giving away everything too early. But I think the problem with Listeners Episode 1 for me was it didn't give me enough of what I need to connect with Echo as a character, and it similarly also didn't distinguish itself enough in a way that I felt like, you know, made it didn't seem like it was derivative, or, you know, that at least gave it some of its own unique identity. Like, it feels like too much like other things rather than its own thing. Like, the comedy, seen it all done before, like the Nier Automata stuff, the Witcher stuff, the Battle Angel Alita stuff. Like, it just feels to me like uninspired is the word I would use for it. That's the final word I would use to describe this episode, which doesn't make it bad, I should stress, by the way. I still enjoyed my time with it, but it's probably, in my opinion, as far as stream of thought, like shows we've covered, one of the weaker opening episodes we've covered. It ain't Frank's episode 1, it's better than that. But of all the other things that we've covered in our mainline series, I think it's probably like the second worst behind Frank's.
Yeah, we've covered a lot of
Which
really
doesn't make
good
it bad
shows.
That again, hard, like, you know, hard competition to be in, like with all the good stuff we have covered.
I think for me, all those things that you pointed out that you saw before, like, are mostly, I think, the like visual design choices, and I think in terms of the characters themselves, I thought that they were like, are you ever going to find a truly unique character in anime? Like, who could say? But like, I'm not saying they're like, oh, this first episode they were these totally, I've never seen anything like these characters before, but they didn't feel like one note tropes, both of our leads. And the visual design, like you said, like some of it was referential, but it was also pleasing to me. It was very appealing, and I like the characters. The world is kind of a cool like thing that we've gotten. I mean, we don't have any connective tissue in terms of like putting together a whole picture, but we've seen bits of it, and we've seen different elements of it, and they're elements that I thought were super cool. And we haven't even gotten to the thing that really made the whole episode work for me, which was the spectacle at the end, the giant robot fight, and the fact that like you have this like sort of tinkered up robot, like you said, just made out of junk and spare parts, which ended up looking so cool and so unique. That's the unique thing to me, is the robot design. And then the earless, which I thought were, again, I really liked the design. And then that moment when they kind of all encircled the robot, and it's just like wailing away on the guitar. The music was so good, and you have Mu riding on the shoulder of the robot, not in the cockpit, not controlling it from the sideline, but like on the shoulder. I thought that was really a cool pilot placement, and I can't really think of another robot show that's done that. And the fight scene, the way that it took them out, was so really awesome looking. It was, it was the spectacle from the beginning of the episode, but in a fully fleshed out way that we could see it. And I thought it was tremendous. It really got me going, and I was like, yes, I am up for more of this. More of this, please. Like, it just made everything come together and was a beautiful note to end the show on.
Fair enough then. Fair play to you, Doc. Like, it's going to be your mileage may vary thing, and I'm not going to, say you're wrong or anything like that. Absolutely not. I think for me, like I say, I enjoyed my time with it, but I feel like it didn't stick out in my memory. Like, it felt kind of forgettable. And I think the other thing as well is that, again, a lot to ask for the first episode, but I remember like watching, for example, Promised Neverland episode 1, and I was like, holy crap, I must see what happens next.
Yeah,
or Vinland Saga episode, holy crap, I must see what happens next.
Yeah.
And I think that
those are
in some way this is an intentional. Yeah, and I think in some way, like, this is an intended part of the way the show's constructed, in that they're off to parts unknown without any real set goal. That's actually intentional. That's the feature, not a bug, as you say. But like, I don't have this feeling that I'm in any real rush to see what happens next. I am, of course, concerned. I do want to see it, but I don't feel like propelled to it, like impatient. And again, lots to ask for a first episode. It's it's difficult. It's tough. I've been very critical of this show, haven't I? And I must say, like, I did still enjoy my time with it overall. Don't get me wrong. But I feel like it's like I've said before, I find it the most difficult as a critic to be in the situation where I'm not actively hating on a show, but I'm not actively like loving it either. Like, I'm just feeling kind of on it. The Aka 13 effect, as I once described it. And that's kind of where I am now, which...
It took me like half a dozen episodes, if not more, to get into Eureka 7. I I thought the beginning of it was very ho-hum at the time. It could have just been me in the place I was. Like, again, I haven't watched it in a long time, so I might revisit it and be like, oh man, this was great.
Heck, if you want me to be bluntly honest, like, I watched Eureka 7 because Emily, like, mentioned it as a question. I thought I need to have some knowledge of this going into this question, and I was therefore watching it with a frame of reference to listeners in itself. And so therefore, I can't say that I rated it, like, objectively, quote unquote, because I was watching it specifically as a frame of reference to something else rather than on its own merits. So, in turn, don't take my opinion of Eureka 7 as episode 1 to be sacrosanct either, because I really enjoyed it. I thought it was superior in every way that mattered to listeners episode 1, but would I have had the same opinion had I not just been watching it as listeners episode 1 and watching Eureka 7 for that purpose? It's kind of crazy when you kind of think about it in this way, isn't it? Holy... Context. You can't watch things in the vacuum. Reviewers really are imperfect beings and not like, the science of like, quality that people make out to be.
The view from nowhere. Sake. We don't have it. Well, I'm hopeful that like Eureka 7 like eventually became something that I considered an all-time like favorite and like a new kind of classic in the mecha genre. I'm hopeful that this one will win you over and exceed my expectations. Like again, I don't think. I mean, it's so too early to say like what the show even is in terms of like quality and writing and like what it's where will it rank in the pantheon of mecha show. I mean, I don't know. I thought this first episode was super entertaining. And I got a lot out of it. We will see how it goes, and yeah, I hope Dai Sato wins you over.
Well, he's done a lot of good work in the past. There's no reason, to douse him now. Let's have some faith in the man,
Yeah, let's hope the Ajin demi-human Ando-san is not like, being the external pressure that you spoke of on Dai Sato, throwing his scripts away and be like, no, make it more mediocre. It's too good.
Oh no, we don't want that. Oh no. Oh. I'm sorry, but this is too good. We want it diluted as fuck.
It must be.
This needs to be the Diet Pepsi of anime.
Shade on
that's
Pepsi.
That's a. Well, then, if this to me is Diet Pepsi, like how would you describe Frank's? Was that like secondhand bathwater?
Lukewarm piss. I don't know.
The yellow kind as well. There's your mental image. Oh, God. Right, anyway, I think that concludes our discussion then. Do you have any other points actually you want to add, Doc? Are we good?
I brought up all the main points I wanted to. Is it time to rate the episode?
It is. This is the point where I think you will scream at me. I am so sorry. Do you want to give your rating first, or do you? No, I'll give mine first, because that way then then we get to end on what will undoubtedly be a higher rating from you and a more positive note. So, I can't believe I'm about to do this. Oh dear. Right then, I am going to give episode 1 of Listeners 2.5 giant musical note statues out of 5. I would have given it a 3 were it not for the comedic elements that I found questionable. They are the sole thing that put it down to very much middle of the road. Bear in mind I used the whole Buffalo. The lowest mark I ever gave, I think, was 1 to one episode of Frank's, the one where they said, children of the future. I basically wanted to throw my monitor out.
Oh, that one. Was that
I wanted to throw my monitor out of the... That was a rough fucking episode.
That was a negative number.
That was a shite fest. But no, as I say, like, I feel like that this show didn't have a strong enough identity for me right out of the gate. It really needed, like, first episodes to me, like, they need to leave a lasting impression that makes me want more. And I just felt like this was so much of other things I'd seen elsewhere and not much of its own, like, unique flavor. Like, yeah, I know, like, we've seen all these things elsewhere in stuff before, like, and originality is dead, you can't do it anymore, but it to me feels like, the ingredients shouldn't stick out so much, if that makes any sense.
Sure, it can be. I understand. It can be distracting if it's. I do see that point. I understand where you're coming from.
Yeah, and I wish that, like I say, there was more, like, flavor in the terminology in the world that was going on. Like, I wished I connected more with Echo rather than just feeling very distant to what was going on with him, because it just kind of felt like we had cut content, so to speak, that fleshed him out.
Deleted scenes.
And deleted scenes, yeah, something like that. But I am hopeful that the show will improve. There's no reason it can't. There's nothing in this episode that I actively dislike, save for the comedic elements, but I think that my dislike of them was not so much, me spitting, like, at the screen, but rather just, like, feeling very tired by them, because I've seen it before, which ties into my overall point that I wish that the show had something more to it, like, in terms of, like, having an identity rather than just many different things I've seen elsewhere. So, feel free to email into warudeshow@gmail.com. Tell me that I'm completely full of it, because you know what, you're probably right, to be quite honest. But anyway, 2.5 from me. The lowest score I've given in quite some time.
I bet a lot of people in our Discord will feel that way. But I guess I'm the high person on the show. Like, I'm going to give it 4.5 for this episode. I as a debut, I thought it was really promising. It was super solid, and I got a core duo that I like a whole lot, and got as you know, like you, I do think, like, making an impression is important, and I think the characters, and then that one sequence of, I keep wanting to say Renton now that we've talked about Eureka 7, but Echo, Echo, kind of finding his way as he thinks he's about to die, and then, like, uniting up with Mu into the giant robot fight. Like, I found that all really exhilarating, and because we got that character moment before, it was so it felt like it resonated a little bit more with me than just if it were simply the robot fight, which was good enough. But there was like an additive quality to it, such that, like, again, I've talked a lot about the fuck yeah, jump off my couch meter, and that got me up. That got me out of my chair fist pumping. Like, that whole fight was incredible for me. It was really good. So yeah, I'm into it. Like, I want to see what this Jimmy Stonefree character, who I guess used to live in that town, is all about. I want to see the Near Automata folks and what their deal is.
Will they? Is their goal to become as gods? I wonder.
It must be. Musical rock gods.
You are so right. Wager, by the way, Mew is going to turn out to be one of those from the same group, and we will have a flashback of her wearing a face cloth, not too
totally.
From the ones that
is exactly what I thought. That she's like the missing band member.
Oh shit! Is it the reunion?
It is the reunion.
Oh man, we're getting the band back together, whether they like it or not.
That's right.
Anyway, that brings us to the end of our discussion. We will be putting up polls. They may not be up at the time that this podcast comes out, but we will notify you separately via Twitter. To everyone listening at home, thank you so much for joining us to cover Listeners Episode 1. We will definitely be back next week to cover Episode 2. If you've enjoyed this podcast and are looking to support us financially, first off, I'd like to mention that you don't have to, because it is tough times for everyone right now. We'd rather you keep your money where it's needed most. But if you do ultimately want to do that, feel free to jump over to our Patreon at patreon.com/Warui Deshou. Get yourself access to our Discord for $2 at a minimum. For all the higher tiers, you can get access to our ad-free episodes, such as this one, our second stream podcast, which will either be on yesterday or was Kakushigoso, as I mentioned before. We're going to decide that live on air in a bloody fight to the death. So that's going to be interesting. And you can also then request us to cover specific anime if you subscribe to the highest tier of $5. You can ask us questions week on week about the shows that we cover, all sorts of good stuff coming along there. If you're otherwise wanting to support us in a way that's not financial, that is also great. Definitely thank you for that. You can do so by just simply subscribing to our Spotify, subscribe to our YouTube, like, rate, follow, share, do all the social media buttons, smash your head against the keyboard so everyone knows about us. Any constructive feedback is also very welcome also, and you can leave that on our Twitter. Doc, where can people find you on the internet?
At the Subtle Doctor on Twitter. please at me and support listeners together with me.
And if you want to join me in, having a tepid feeling on listeners, which doesn't quite sound as, counterculture as otherwise I'd have liked, in some way, like, I know this sounds crazy, but I wish I actually hated this show because then I feel like we could have more of a chemistry going on here. But right now I'm just kind of like, it was okay, it was fine. And that's the worst place to be as a critic. So if you want to be sitting on the fence with me, you can feel free to do so by following me at Shadon1010 on Twitter. And you can talk to me about anything and everything. I mean, we've got plenty of time for it right now. Why the hell not? Otherwise, that brings us to the end of the podcast. I would be remiss if I didn't mention, of course, that we are in tough times all around at the moment with what's going on with COVID-19. So I will just say to everyone listening to this podcast, whether you're listening to out and about, if you are able to get out, or at home, however you're doing so, we really appreciate taking the time to do so at the moment, like given what's going on. And I hope that you all stay safe, you look after yourselves, you look after your loved ones. We will get through this. I'm not going to pretend it's not going to be a rough time until we do, but we will come out of this far, in the end, and we'll all be okay for it, I reckon. All have things to look forward to. And I hope you'll be there along with us as we go through listeners during this time. So yeah, take care everyone, look after yourselves, look after your loved ones, look after your friends and family. And as we're often fond of saying on this podcast, and this is the first time we've made a Macross reference apart from Shoji Karamori referencing this podcast, this particular episode, which to me is quite surprising actually in hindsight, but we'll talk about it next time. As we're often fond of saying, embrace Trevor everyone, it's the end of the universe. And good night.
Bring back the brothers.